So we'll start with the questions. Each side will have 5 minutes to give their answer, and then they'll get a 1-minute rebuttal. So we'll start with Michelle Knoll for the first question, which is, what plans do you have to make the campus area and the surrounding community around it safer?
Ohio State is an urban campus, and we face many of the same issues as urban cities. Walking alone on and off campus causes us many dangers. We see a need for increased voices, increased rides from student safety services. We propose a rideshare model similar to the Uber and Lyft model, where student drivers will be hired as student drivers and use their private vehicles. Within this, we hope that there would be no call ahead to book a ride and to get more students home safely in a timely manner. We will also integrate online booking onto the OSU mobile app to make sure booking rides is more convenient for students.
Joint jurisdiction is another example of USG spending a lot of time and effort on something with the hope of off-campus safety in mind. The challenge Ohio State faces on this matter is that relationships between OSU PD and Columbus PD are very minimal. Through the Health and Safety Committee of USG this past semester, I had the opportunity to go on a ride-along with an OSU police officer. It was a very enriching experience, and a couple of the biggest things he talked about was the disconnect between the two police departments and the need for increased staffing. OSU PD typically sticks to themselves while CPD does the same. In an area where there's a clear-cut line of jurisdiction in the middle of a heavily populated area, we need to have the relationship between the two departments be very strong. Currently, there is only one Ohio State police officer who has gone through the joint jurisdiction training. We're going to push the OSU Police Department to prioritize this relationship, as well as encourage smart hiring and maximizing resources. For example, when we are hiring new police officers, we highly recommend to the department that they purchase used cars instead of new ones. This will save the student body a lot of money and the university a lot of money. Our student body deserves to be also properly informed on safety matters. So we want to make sure that we make it a priority to ensure students are properly alerted of crimes taking place in the campus area. Thank you.
Good. Abby squared.
All right, so first off, I would like to address how important safety is to our team, Abby and Abby. It wasn't until my sophomore year when it really hit home with me why safety is so important. I lived in the Alpha Phi house my sophomore year at Ohio State. One of my best friends from high school was living in the Delta Gamma house at the time. During her short walk from the Delta Gamma parking lot into their house, she was robbed at gunpoint and stolen, and all of her belongings on her were stolen. This is just one example of a student at Ohio State who was affected by the lack of safety here at Ohio State and off campus. This situation drove me to become more passionate about the issue of safety around campus, and I was a part of the University Area Safety Committee this year and the University Senate, along with working on the University District Task Force. Through these experiences, many things were made very clear about what is and what is not being done to ensure safety on and off campus for all students. Abby and I, along with our team, have worked towards creating a 4-point safety plan. Well, I remember my freshman year coming from Solon, Ohio, which some people like to call a bubble, to this big campus of Ohio State. I felt very safe, and I felt like I could walk from Thompson to Park Stradley, my dorm, and feel like I could walk there alone. Well, I was talking to my dad one night on the phone, and he asked me who I was walking with. And I told him I was walking alone, and I didn't realize at the time this was on the list of things probably not to tell your parents as a freshman. And you know, he told me, he was like, you've got to make sure you're safe. You've got to be preventative. You've got to walk with people. If I had known this knowledge then, this kind of leads into one of our, Wiley's going to talk to you guys more about the other 3 points of our safety plan, but one of my favorite points of our safety plan is to create a mandatory safety class for all first-year students here at Ohio State. There are numerous ways that this plan can be executed, from incorporating it into residence halls to incorporating it into survey classes or even the first-year success series. After talking with multiple administrators, it is very clear that there is a need for a safety course here at Ohio State, and it is something that we are lacking. We envision that this course be very relatable and very productive for all students. We all remember being told in high school, don't drink, and all of these things that a lot of times pass over students' heads. We want to make sure that we can connect to the average and typical student here at Ohio State. We hope to bring not only alcohol education and relatable and how to stay safe on the weekends, but also issues such as sexual assault. We hope to bring survivor stories into these classes to relate to the typical student and to be able to show them what sexual assault can look like, regardless of your gender. There's so much more we can talk about of what can be incorporated into this safety course, but we just wanted to touch on a few. The overall goal of this course is to be preventative rather than reactionary on an issue so important such as safety as a university and as an undergraduate student government.
Another point of our plan is to work with universities all across Ohio to enact the Good Samaritan Law. A type of policy like this can be effective in so many beneficial ways. It is needed. If help is needed, a student shouldn't hesitate to call. We in the state of Ohio need to create an environment where those in need are supported and those who call for help are protected. As I said in my intro, I'm a student from Indiana. Last year, one of my high school classmates fell fatal to alcohol-related injuries. This was a complete shock to the entire community of Indiana University, as well as to my students from my high school. Although Indiana already enacted a lifeline law, students still need to be educated on it. If Ohio enacts a similar piece of legislation, we will work extremely hard to educate all incoming students as well as current students here at Ohio State, because it is important to care for one another regardless of the circumstance. Our third point is to work with high street businesses to increase off-campus lighting on Pearl Street. This is such a practical solution to life off campus. I'm not sure how many of you know the dangers of walking down Pearl Street alone, or worse, in the dark of nights. It has been repeated to me since I was a freshman about how I shouldn't walk alone down Pearl Street. If an area of off-campus is that bad, it needs to be desperately changed. Partnering with the businesses on the high street and by working with them to provide lighting on the back side of their business can drastically change the assumptions around Pearl Street. Our last point on our 4-point safety plan is to reform the student safety services. Currently, students need to call hours ahead of time in order to reserve a ride. In general, the idea of the service is great, but it needs to be improved to accommodate the entire student body. The service needs to be used in the most efficient way possible, and currently, we do not do so. This particular solution, students need quality over quantity for student safety.
All right, time's up. Your rebuttal.
Just 1 minute. We need a 30 seconds. So the last point that Abby Weilich was getting out there was trying to make the student safety services more efficient. We addressed this in our plan to create an Uber model for the student safety services. The benefits of this plan not only is to cut down the wait time for students who are studying late at night at Thompson, for example, and have to get to their apartment down on Summit late at night, but also it provides students with jobs. The way we're going to go about doing this is letting students use their own vehicles as a means of transportation for those who request it. We'll have an app that students can use very easily, and we have a whole plan laid out on how exactly students are going to do this.
All right, so to touch a little bit on the Uber model plan that you guys have discussed, it is great and ideal, and ideally that is a great plan. But I don't know many students who are going to want to be willing to take home a lot of the students that will be utilizing those rides, such as late at night on the weekends in their own vehicles. That is not necessarily the most practical plan. Along with it brings a lot of liability to students in their vehicles and also to the university.
Safety is so much more than simply walking home at night. It involves every single aspect that you're here on campus. That's why the 4-point safety plan that we have developed encompasses all of those aspects. And our team will work together to enact all of those things in the upcoming year.
Thank you. Go ahead, stay up here.